What if we lived in bizarro world? What if economics itself didn't appear to really matter and trends of war and production were completely inverse from one another? Seemingly, the United States lost World War II because, as is tradition, we are really back-to-back World War champs, except in this timeline, which is the worst timeline. Due to this issue, the United States as we know it appears to have completely collapsed for the most part, and from the remnants arose a new regime that was totalitarian, what was that, and militarized heavily. You know, we're going to leave it in. Because the war completely snapped the American spirit and sapped American industrialism and capability roughly 20 years prior, we are left with a country that seemingly forgot it sits on massive resources and forgot how to use a pickaxe to obtain them, which is a bit strange. So an idea was concocted. What if, as a prank, we take an incredibly valuable resource, the young men of the country, and have them enter what is essentially a death march to inspire the rest of the country into working harder? Does it track with human psychology? Is it a good idea? Will the people actually love their country more because of this? If you said anything other than what the name of all that is holy is that, no, then you are a massive dork. But I can hear you now. Roanoke, what sort of biology could there possibly be? Rhabdomyolysis, baby, which we'll be getting into that heavily sort of later on. But for now, let's attempt to understand what this thinking even is, because the human brain simply cannot track patriotism this way, and this was incredibly stupid. We kick off today's story with a letter. Dear Mr. Raymond, we regret being alien bastards. We regret coming to Earth, and we most certainly regret the Corps blowing up our raggedy-ass fleet. Alright, but on the real though, he has received his place in the march and will get $100 if he wins. So obviously $100 versus life in a non-cool United States, you win either way. Because this isn't the actual cool United States, I mean this is a lamer version, everyone then heads to the walk and it's just a regular challenge with no horrors awaiting you. Those soldiers are just props. A tank definitely won't run over your legs if you trip, that would be crazy. Prometheus didn't back out though of the challenge, as his mother says he still has time to do it. Not really. Getting out of the car, bro does not look healthy enough to be doing this, and really, the walking clothes he's in are not ideal. Crying it out for a moment, he says he will see her in just a few days, which is unlikely. Also, nice truck in the background. I believe that's a 5th gen F-Series truck. These things with 33s and modern power are absolutely beautiful. Anyhow, Ray meet Peter, Peter meet Ray. Everyone glad hands and then sits down. Conserve that energy, boys, as one guy is pacing saying he's getting warmed up. Really bad idea, bro. Save your energy. One guy is raring to rip as the major then approaches in a jeep, telling them to all sit down. As he calls out their names, they're given tags and then told, yeah, sit back down. One guy specifically gets told good luck, perhaps the major's son, not sure yet, which, future Roanoke, spoiler alert, which you're already watching this anyways, yes, it is the old man's son, which, why would you want to enter this contest with your son? It seems like an incredibly risky thing to do, like your prodigy has the odds stacked against them. But here's what transpired prior to this walking contest. Also, bear with me, I think I mentioned this later in the script, but I am on a fast right now. I almost 37 hours, so Anyways, essentially after some sort of war, which is hypothesized to be potentially World War II, where the Germans actually won, which arguably, had that happened, while I don't think we would have gone exactly down the Wolfenstein route, it probably would have gone more like the Man in the High Castle or whatever it was. I don't believe the US would have been allowed to reform under any circumstances, otherwise the same issues for Germany could have arisen just down the line. But somehow, against all odds, the US was allowed to just sort of do its own thing, seemingly, and the country has been in a period of economic hardship, which is a bit strange given war is usually amazing for economic booms due to the massive spike in production because of needs. Not to mention the US has vast resources, so even had we lost, it doesn't really seem like the country has been attacked. Our machinations in industry should have theoretically still been quite viable at this point. Although, I guess we would have gone completely towards isolationism, I can only assume. So does everyone just have collective amnesia on production? Because here's what doesn't make any sense. After the walk, which is supposed to inspire a work ethic, there is always another spike in production. So then, why not just keep the people employed? Clearly, we have the capability. You know what? I'm a biology guy, not an economics one, so someone who actually does this for a living, let me know why this makes absolutely zero sense. Okay, thanks. Now, interestingly, though, the watch that Ray has appears to be way more futuristic, given the vehicles that are being driven. This is sort of like a satellites thing, I think. Bit strange, isn't it?
Mom, where were you? Why didn't you save me?
The Major suggests that there is an epidemic of laziness, and I'm not sure if I believe everything the Major says, but again, given the aforementioned rant about clearly the US wasn't really attacked and there's still production means, why would the US be having problems? I think this comes down to just the mentality of humanity. It's sort of like when your favorite sports team loses, there's actually a marked depression in people, even if it is coming from just an artificial tribe. The United States losing a war would absolutely make the real tribe depressed, which is Americans. As a result, what appears to be laziness is actually just people asking, what's the point if we can't even win? To that end, sure, I suppose, but at a certain point, you gotta go back to work and just sort of make it happen. This is fairly interesting as an idea of what would happen to the US. Of course, we can look to real world data and see, with Vietnam, which scoreboard we definitely didn't fare too well in, our military did learn a ridiculous amount of information from, ground tactics, which is why we are kind of where we are now. But apparently, what is inspiring to the population now is walk until there's only one of them left. Stay above 3 miles per hour, and if you step off the pavement, you get your ticket without warning. The major then sees hope in each one of them, allegedly, as they start walking, leaving some origami behind. Now, I have a feeling this was probably explained in the book, because under no circumstances will this ever be referenced again in the movie. Beginning their trek, they then pass a dead cow. All right then, how deep does this depression actually go? So as they are being filmed, they have made it to mile 5. Everyone says they feel fine as number 38 then gets a warning. One guy then eats some jelly sandwiches as another guy goes and ties his shoes, which good plan eating a high sugar food there. That won't compromise your blood sugar, making you more tired later at all. Number 5 then gets a second warning, as then he gets a third warning and almost gets domed because of his shoes. Brother, that was incredibly stupid. Approaching mile 7, they continue talking about all the money they're going to get. Ray claims that the walk or the prize doesn't really matter. The walk doesn't, in my humble opinion, but the money could be useful. But then again, you're also in an economically depressed country at that time, so maybe money is mostly useless. Which just brings up further questions. Then why are you out here to possibly die? Man, the chafing also would be atrocious. This is hurting my inner thighs just watching this. Basically, even with money, nobody is apparently doing well, so that's not a really big, carrot on a stick metric for him, but passing back and forth a cigarette as Glasses over here is writing a book about the long walk. Ha, he said it. Bro's definitely also biting the dust then, because riders in these types of movies never survive. Passing by a house, a woman then stares at them as one guy gets a Charlie horse only 7 miles in. That is not a good sign. Ray then grabs him, pulling him forward, as it sort of loosens up, but he's not doing too well. You can also just walk backwards, maybe engage, your quads a little better. Falling down, they then dome him immediately. You probably shouldn't have watched that, Ray. Also, the guy knew he was going on some sort of march that could result in him getting domed, and he's gonna have to walk far, and he didn't train in the slightest for this possibility. Brother man, that was just stupid as all get out. But now, we know the stakes. Then, for some reason, we get the title card, The Long Walk, 22 minutes into the movie. Pretty wild, almost jump scare worthy, actually. I did not think that they were going to do that this far in. Also, I'm, 38 hours into my post-holiday fast, so my brain is getting a little out there because I also had mushroom coffee this morning. Bear with me. So the Major now rallies everyone for his bravery, as he said his brains were given some fresh air. In celebration, Waters then passed out. Turning backwards, Broham then bleeds the lizard as they talk about how since the Major is here, there is no finish line. They will walk them until there is only one left, which I'm fairly certain this is what they did every year, right? This can't be any different, right? I don't know. So a girl has a sign saying that she loves Ray, no idea who, but I believe it may have been his ex-girlfriend who he broke up with prior to the walk because he assumed he wasn't coming back anyways. So as they keep talking, what else are you gonna do on a walk? Continue to move ahead. One guy has a literal seizure falling to the ground, popping him. At least he was consciously checked out at that point anyhow, so it's not like he really even had an inkling as to what was going on. Probably a better way for you to go out on this walk because others just get straight up screwed over. Getting to the dam, they're only 25 miles in. As they pass by random people, where are they? The backwoods of Pennsylvania? Maybe not. So my question also is, did anyone actually train for this? Hank's muscles keep hurting as they keep walking, which ain't a good sign. Hank is allergic to Spam, so he can't eat the stuff that the military hands out to keep them fueled. Gare Bear over here keeps talking smack at the front of the pack as he picks on a dude named Rank. Gary gets one guy domed, Rank, because he falls, which Rank could have just stood up and kept walking, I don't know. So Peter calls him to task over it, telling him to come back there as Gary starts having a crash out because of this entire situation. He just got somebody totally blown away. So they just leave Rank there on the ground. Finding a crow hung up on a line, this will also never be explained. Seemingly the entire country is just people crashing out hardcore. As they keep walking on their trek, people keep watching them go by. A poignant question then comes up. What happens when you need to take a dump? Well, you're going to find out since I had to find out, but the question, do you wipe or just let it crust, gang, is all I can say. God, I need to stop watching Instagram memes. Speaking of Instagram, I have one of those. People are shocked about it, no idea why. It's basically just me fixing up crappy cars and posting random nonsense. Links in the description if you want to see me messing with a 3rd-gen 4Runner that most definitely almost killed me on the drive back. So Ronald at this point drops trowel and takes a dump as he gets domed because of it, and they're now at mile 35. Where else in the world could you get an opportunity like this? Hopefully nowhere. This looks terrible. But you know what could make it better? Today's sponsor. But first, this episode is sponsored by Raycon. The essential open earbuds are here to help you crush your New Year goals. Go to buyraycon.com/Roanoke Open to get 20% off everything. Regular earbuds block out, everything that you hear. You can't hear someone calling your name, a car honking, a dog barking at you that's running at you, your house engulfed in flames while you're listening to a podcast. These Raycons will sit just outside your ear canal, so you get a really clear sound, but you can actually hear what's happening around you too. That awareness is perfect for tackling your fitness resolutions safely. They're really light and the ear hook part rotates, so they actually also stay in. I've worn them at the gym, on walks, doing stuff around the house. They don't fall out, and they really don't get uncomfortable. Sometimes I like to work out with friends. Sometimes I like to work out alone. Raycon has both covered. When with friends, I can actually wear these open earbuds and still engage in conversation or hear traffic out on a run. Or when it's just me, I can use my other noise-canceling earbuds. With the open earbuds, lightweight design, and again, turns towards the ear canal, it's actually an amazing middle ground for being aware of your surroundings, but also able to still hear music. So if you're in the market for a pair of awesome open earbuds, then go to buyraycon.com/Roanoke Open to get 20% off everything. All right, let's get back to it. Flashing back to Ray's mom singing to him, he is sleepwalking basically as he was dreaming while walking, which I used to fall asleep with my eyes open in class back in the day, so hey, it's possible, I guess. So as everyone keeps talking and walking, that's how it be. None of these guys have girlfriends apparently anymore, as they just kind of get another warning, well, at least Ray does. Better to keep watching that, bro. Takes 3 hours to walk off each warning. He then has a crash out at Peter as a lot of them start falling out due to the steep grade that is approaching. Dropping like absolute flies, this is a real problem. This is like way faster than 3 miles per hour as well, like they speed up. So they've entered like power walking territory, maybe even a light jaunt if you will. Peter then grabs Ray and starts pulling up the hill as Broham then follows them. So as they keep moving, Ray apologizes because he realized he had almost had his mind just introduced to some lead and Peter had to save him right after he was a huge loser to Peter. That night was a rough one as they are now at mile 59 on day 2. Apparently, Ray needs to win for other reasons he posits, but what are those reasons? Vengeance. Though Ray says he won't actually win. Peter didn't realize this really was a walk or die situation, so it's for real, not for play. Peter says when the time comes and he's tired enough, he's just going to sit down. They lost 14 last night, and there are only 18 of them left now. Getting to mile 6...
No, stop! What are you doing?
Absolutely not.
So anyways, they have walked so far at this point that new weather patterns are beginning to emerge. Clouds have moved in as Hank is looking rough. Peter then seems to be doing quite well as everyone is telling him to go to hell because of it. Mr. Bookrider broke his ankle earlier as then he keeps walking, but given the broken ankle, he can't walk any further as then he's domed. See, the rider never survives. I think that is done because it's like the severing of future potential. They wanted to put something out into the world about current events, and now it's forever lost as their brains are scattered onto the ground. I think that's really the whole purpose of like taking out every writer and every like horrific event. So speaking of future plans, Ray has plans for Peter for some reason, as Peter then apologizes to Hank. They realize there's only supposed to be one person that survives this, right? A lot of interpersonal communication going on, but they have made it to 100 miles to the next crappy town that looks pretty rough. Stebbins now begins to show signs that he's getting sick, as one guy then tries to make a run for it, but is domed. At over 100 miles now, everyone is looking extremely tired. Hank says if he wins, he wants 10 naked ladies. Apparently, it's not just money you can get whatever you want if you complete the long walk. Well, Hank, why stop at 10? Also, this is pretty messed up. We're going to learn later. Peter then says maybe there's a finish line, and if they all make it, then they can all survive. Very unlikely. They are popping people on the spot. Also, removing life from your own citizens is not the same as dealing with an enemy force. These soldiers are going to be absolutely distraught later. Of course, this regime likely has people brainwashed, so there's always that part to consider. Hank then says this is not enjoyable at all anymore. This was enjoyable even 2 miles in? I don't think so, bro. He then says, though, as long as his gum lasts, so does he. Although I found that if you chew gum for more than 15 hours, it will completely fall apart, which is very strange. You know, you got a ton of digestive enzymes in your spit, so that's probably what's doing the work. So Peter continues to inspire the rest of the crew here to say screw the long walk and screw the major. Evidently somewhat cathartic, they continue their walk as later it begins raining, which is less than ideal for them. Peter and Ray then keep walking together as Peter says it's time for Ray to sleep, and then, you know, later he could sleep. It is now day 3 at 144 miles. Art then goes to take a dump as he almost gets taken out, and answering the question from earlier, he decidedly lets it crust. God, that is nasty, as then they send Art ahead because they don't want to smell that. With nothing else to do, Ray then keeps talking to Peter, confiding in him. He says his dad is his hero, and he showed him all of these books about the old ways, as they are claimed, but having a flashback, his old man was then taken into the road, as the major says he's being accused of teaching illegal ideas. Which, okay, quick question. Is the major like the only dude around here enforcing the law or something? Like he's in charge of the long walk as well as policing the entire nation? How small exactly is this new nation? Is it coast to go? You know what? I'm gonna look this up. Okay, having looked into this, the US is still the size of the US. It still has all the states, and the major apparently has taken over the whole thing. This would be like the president attending your Little League game and taking out the team that didn't win. What is even happening in this movie? Or this book, for that matter? The major has to be omnipotent, that's all I'm saying. So telling the dad to renounce what he has said and told his son and then pledge allegiance to the state and make the honorable choice here, his dad says, you know what? I'm not going to do that. So then he's taken out by the major. Ray then says he's there not to walk, but to kind of deal with the major because of this. His wish is going to be for a force multiplier and then replace some of the cells in the major's body with element 82. Peter then tries to talk him out of it, basically saying taking him out isn't worth it, which, not so sure about that, Prometheus. I think it could totally be worth it. It's been shown in the past that if a person's in power, like with the Soviets or whatever, that passing it to the next person may in turn actually cause ideas to begin shifting, which I believe actually is what led to the downfall of the Soviet Union. But the major may need to be challenged in that way, I suppose, but passing by more people, Ray then says they just want to see some brains in the concrete, as Peter says vengeance isn't enough for him. Well, look, this whole area is like corrupt AF, so I don't know, maybe resistance under this regime would be necessary? Which, okay, wait up. One guy falls, right? And then they run over his legs with a tank. How is that even remotely what the walk is about? You guys could have maneuvered that a little bit, but at this point, this appears malicious. Granted, this whole event makes very little sense to me. But they gave him his final warning while he's sitting there with crushed legs, which are not even attached to his body anymore, but since he can't actually get up, they then dome him, which, why even give him a warning, man? What is that going to do? What is he going to do, walk on nubs? Also, driving a tank for hundreds of miles using gas to do so during this alleged economic hardship is absolutely crazy work. Okay, what is the MPG of a tank real quick? I'm gonna look this up. Okay, having looked this up, World War II tanks, which I think this is one of those, achieved very low fuel efficiency. They got half a mile to 1.5 miles per gallon if the wind was at your back and you're driving downhill. So let's just assume even heavy tanks like the Tiger II consumed good lord, you only got 0.2 miles per gallon? Woof, dude. Also, I suppose, 0.5 to 0.9 miles per gallon in the Lord's units is in heathenistic units, 246 to 450 liters per kilometers, or per 100 kilometers. So, yeah, taking a tank seems really stupid because that means you would have used like 200 gallons of fuel just to have this tank drive along. For what purpose, I am not sure. And then more to the point, if you're in this economic hardship and is fuel easy to get? Okay. But like I said, using this thing during an economic hardship is absolutely crazy work. One guy then takes off his clothes down to his whitey-tighties and starts making a run for it and is immediately taken out. Not sure why he did that. So as they hit 201 miles here, that means 402 gallons of gas have been burnt by this tank alone. There are not many people left also. Stebbins asks if Ray is tired. Hank is looking more and more rough, and Ray goes to talk to Hank, but he's almost unresponsive. He starts talking about God's garden is full of weeds as he attempts to go grab the force multiplier from a soldier. Taking a shot to the abdomen, Art then goes back for him as he's beginning to bleed out. Ray goes next, but Hank is then done, bro, because he's not doing so well. He yells he did it wrong, as then they don't appear to dome him, but just sort of let him bleed out. At least we never hear the shot. See, getting pretty malicious 200 miles in. Welcome to day 4 at mile 209. It appears as though there are only about 6 people left. Hank was married, so they make a pact that whoever wins will take care of each other's family. Why do you want 10 naked ladies? As Stebbins ain't feeling so good. He hasn't been sick in 10 years, but on the walk, that's when his meat suit decides to do this. Bummer, bro, but that actually do be that way. Ray then talks to Gare Bear over here, as he says he never had a crowd that he runs with. He feels really bad about rank, as then he apologizes for it and starts crashing out hard. Gary yells at Peter as Ray tries to calm him down, saying they're all friends. Well, more of like acquaintances on a walk, I suppose. Who are now trauma bonded, but taking off ahead, he then turns and stops as he stabs himself in the neck. And not like the quick way either. You stabbed yourself in a trachea. Not a trachea, but your trachea. The carotid is not in that location. That is quite possibly the worst way to do that. That's all I'm saying. So now he gets domed in the background, as everyone here is going to straight up need therapy after this. Of course, at least the one surviving person. Welcome to mile 260. We have now burned 520 gallons of gas in this tank alone. As they pass a random burning car, Kali then starts singing as the rest of the group begins joining in. Moving into mile 278 on day 5, everyone's mostly dead at this point. Kali then talks to Ray about his mom and him seeing her. Kali says he's homesick and he's scared at this point. He continues by saying they're both crazy, as apparently this is supposed to get harder later on. Stebbins keeps coughing as they now head to a larger, nicer town as Ray loses his shoes. Ray's mom is there in town as she realizes, well, look at that. My baby boy is still alive. He runs over to his mom as he says, hey, as she... he almost gets domed because of this, but Peter then grabs him and then brings him back into the fold. Peter says his parents both died and he's been walking his whole life, so this isn't that big of a deal. Drunk uncle took him in, but it didn't work out, so Peter left and kept moving as a result. How he got his fashionable scar was he got cut by a hunting knife, but he woke up in a hospital and after that chose to see the light in the dark. Peter says he could use a brother, so if Ray survives, he should go home to his mom with that prize. So now at mile 306, they have burned 612 gallons of fuel in that tank. There are only 5 left. Ray says Peter can't keep saving him as they passed an overturned car, which what is going on with this area? Prometheus has had enough, as now he then rushes a guard and then takes out one of the soldiers, but then gets hit and starts chanting Algonquin. Not giving them the chance to do it, he then domes himself before the soldiers can make a move. So now there are 4. At this point, Art's nose won't stop bleeding, which cannot be a good sign in the slightest, as then they pull him along. He can't keep walking as he says he's going home. Peter then tells him he made some nice friends out there as he makes a last request. Giving him his cross, he says give it to his grandmother, as then he says he's going home. Walking to the soldiers, they then dome him, leaving 3. Now at mile 326, which puts us at 652 gallons of fuel, they tell the Major to shut up. They're all getting warnings now as they are starting to slow down. Ray asks Stebbins how he knows so much about the walk as he says he's the rabbit to keep people moving. The Major is his father, which I knew it. He says he can feel his liver going and his lungs are filling with fluid. From a cold? Not really. We'll actually talk about that later with the effects of walking this far shortly, but Peter then apologizes to him as his dad sucks. Stebbins at this point gives up on the walk, so then they dome him as they continue walking through the town in the rain, leaving just Ray and Peter. It's now a 50-50 chance as Ray says he's not afraid anymore. That's usually when everything goes wrong. As they keep going, a crowd is there cheering them on. As they move to the side, they make way for them. I feel like you could just run into the crowd and the soldiers couldn't really do anything, I think. Yeah, maybe they would. Peter then looks at Ray as Peter decides to stop. Ray grabs Peter and gets him up as Ray now stops as Peter continues on ahead, thinking that he's talking to him. Getting shot and then pull Peter away as the Major shows up. Taking on the mantle of responsibility, Ray is totally domed to the background, and this leaves just Peter, who has won, as fireworks are then launched in his honor. The Major then asks Peter what his wish is, as he asks for a carbine. The Major says he will have it, as he's like, no. That carbine over there, I want to pass it down to my offspring. No one thinks anything of it as he raises it, pulling it on the Major, and he's told it's all right. Trying to calm him down because the Major doesn't want to eat lead, he's informed the prize is his for the taking. Well, I wish the Major was blown away. Saying this is for Ray, he then takes out the Major as he looks down the road and keeps walking, and thus concludes the long walk. Also, fun fact, a dude named Wallabeans from Reddit claims he found the walk. It goes from Woodland Pulp way up in North Maine down to Supino's Italian restaurant near the outskirts of Boston. Italian food right now sounds otherworldly. I am so hungry. Currently 39 hours into this fast. Anyways, now thus concludes the long walk, only to be followed by the longer walk and subsequently the final ending, the longest walk. That was a really lame joke. Hello and welcome to the science portion. As per usual, if you thought anyone actually survived in this movie apart from the soldiers in the tank burning fuel like absolute mad lads, well, Wrong! No shot. No shot anyone actually ended up surviving. Even Peter, at the end, would have succumbed shortly after his apparent success. See, the human body, as much as we would all love to be Gears of War-sized gigachads with infinite energy reserves, we just aren't. I know, I'm still working on that Clayton Carmine physique natty, and it is difficult as all get out. Anyhow, there are very real physical limitations to what our meat suits are capable of, and it all comes down to not just the issue of mental toughness, but the various skeletal muscle cells in which you use. So today, I thought it would be fun to actually discuss the real physical ramifications from a biological perspective as to why this walk is not only impossible, but there is really no winner in the end. Everyone succumbs, and again, it is so dumb that this apparently spikes the economic ability of the country. I really do not understand how it would. It makes no sense. But the way I think that we should set this up is by going day to day, as there are many things said throughout that actually highlight how the body is physically degrading in a way that once it reaches a certain threshold, there is no going back. Too much damage has been done to too many systems, and the person is on borrowed time as is. I think this may give you an appreciation of how desperate someone would truly have to be to ever engage in this type of challenge, because it's not even really a challenge, it's more like I have just mentioned earlier, a complete and utter death march. So as young men arrive to the scene, nobody is too sure what to expect, but clearly by what has been said earlier, everybody is screwed. Most thought maybe a shot would be fired and just a little flag with the word bang would come out, but in reality, this would have a mental impact on them, possibly keeping their heart rates kind of low at first because they don't believe there's actual danger. Nobody really knows what to expect out there, even though this thing is televised every single year, which, maybe that part is edited out. I have no idea. Energy conservation is not too much of a concern, as there are slight pre-game jitters and some pacing claiming that they are warming up. Most are sitting, which would be the more intelligent thing to do, as even warming up is creating micro tears in the muscle and using ATP. What is ATP? Well, it's adenosine triphosphate. It is the energy currency of the cell, which, as we know, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. One phosphate is broken off, and with that breaking, it becomes adenosine diphosphate, and energy is released so that you can stay alive. Alright, so they start their jaunt, as quickly the adrenaline would wear off because now the process has already begun. Everyone is feeling pretty baller, but, by hour one, they're just sort of walking, which we all do every day, not that big of a deal. The only real hormones that they may be dealing with concerning the endocrine system is a little bit of cortisol inspired by the stress of needing to win this thing, and the adrenaline of pumping through their body in low amounts, as this would be kind of coupled with them wanting to win. Mostly, these hormonal releases are associated with the mind, more so than physiological requirements. However, even this early into the game, ATP is being used. Water is being lost to increase breathing rate, electrolytes are being utilized for muscular contractions, and micro tears are beginning to form within the muscles. But at this point, there's really not too much to worry about because you're not 90 years old. However, even on day one, it's not long before problems would begin to arise. In those with more sensitive internal ecosystems, whether that be something like seizures or general conditioning issues, their bodies are not ready for this type of strain that they are placing on them. I don't know why you would join this competition and not train at all, but that seems really dumb. So as the first one falls out, it becomes rather apparent that this isn't just a nice summer evening stroll. Adrenaline in all the young men would then spike as they realize it really is a walk or die scenario. This is when the cortisol would also spike. At first, this combination would actually help keep them alive, but the issue is, over time, this becomes non-sustainable. The body naturally has at its disposal a level of resistance to fatigue, but eventually it becomes exhausted. There is an arc that starts with a stressor. As the stressor remains in the environment, the body will enter this resistance phase, where eventually it reaches its maximum point that it can deal with the stressor. As its ability to resist due to cortisol dumping into the system reaches its maximum point, the body does enter the exhaustion phase, where it is depleted. This predictable arc is as much mental as it is physical, so the concept of just powering through and not worrying about it, past a certain point, it is no longer a viable option, as we will see. And this actually is in real life too. If you are burning yourself out at work consistently all the time, you will become exhausted. What is it? Always take a break before your body makes you take a break. That's kind of the thought process going forward. But as the first day drags on and the miles are placed behind them, the muscles would incur more and more damage to them, creating the aforementioned microtears. Late into the day and into the evening, ATP would become more and more depleted as the body would not be able to really enter the repair phase. Now, ATP is being created in the presence of oxygen, so you're getting way more of it, so lactic acid probably isn't building up as quickly, but it still would be. And also, they're not really gassing it concerning cardio, but other issues would arise within the continual muscular contractions. Unlike cardiac muscle, which is totally involuntary, thank God. Otherwise, we would all have to manually beat our own hearts because I just mentioned it. But breathing is as much voluntary as involuntary, so now you're manually breathing and manually blinking. You're welcome. Completely voluntary muscles.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Specifically, the skeletal muscular system is not equipped to be operated all of the time. Your muscles need downtime to repair. As they continue to remain in this stress state, calcium will then leak into the surrounding muscle, disrupting normal contractions. As due to the cell stress, this is not a good thing, but creatine kinase will also start to rise within the bloodstream. This is a warning signal to the brain that it is time to rest, but it's walk or die. No rest is coming, so the brain just keeps pushing the body. At first, the adrenaline could mask the issue, making everyone feel like they could take on the world, which in turn, we actually see a high level of social bonding amongst the young men. Everyone appears optimistic at their chances, and they're quite talkative. This is the endocrine system operating as designed. The kidneys at this point are still filtering correctly, but as the day continues, a toxic material begins to show up, which is directly damaging to the kidneys. The kidneys can compensate for it for now, but this eventually will cause them to shut down. Entering the night, no sleep is afforded, which is an astronomically large problem that I don't believe everybody thought of when entering this contest. It's not just a walk. You aren't sleeping. The body needs sleep. With deprivation comes a whole host of neurological issues, such as hallucinations, loss of emotional control, and obviously outbursts that follow, but obviously tiredness is another large issue. However, the biggest one is typically this is when the body would make repairs on itself. Without sleep, human growth hormone is never released in large amounts as the muscles are being actively used. This means the muscle never has a chance to repair the micro tears faster than it's being torn, and this will actually push them to start becoming macro tears, which is really bad. After the first night and into the second day, the fallout would be immense, as the adrenaline in your body will have less of an impact because your adrenal glands are going to be basically depleted, and that means you cannot push yourself to go as far, and cortisol would have been present for too long. This means the stress response will have caused you to enter the exhaustion phase as opposed to pushing you to be socializing and happy and yay, life is fun. This is going to be the beginning of the end for a lot of people. But again, human physiology has a fair amount of range within it, so as where one guy develops a Charlie horse at mile 5 and is taken out, another guy may develop this issue at mile 100, and then another guy just never has it. As a result, level of fitness obviously will play a huge role in this. Now you may be asking, well, Roanoke, how did Ray go as far as he did? Well, Ray actually had enough fat reserves to draw from as he walked, which kept him energized, and I can only assume he must have done some form of conditioning. He was just a little more heavy, I guess. I don't know. But the brain does play a role in this walk as well concerning mental toughness. However, you cannot just circumnavigate the literal buildup of injuries in your muscle, regardless of fitness. Eventually, you will walk far enough for long enough that the buildup will literally take you out, which is about to happen to everyone, so let's find out how. Joy abound! As the second day fully arrives, the invisible damage building up is now becoming more visible. The muscles are beginning to swell within the compartments of the body's legs. Every muscle fiber is surrounded by something known as a fascia. The issue with fascia is that it can actually lead to something known as compartment syndrome. This is when the muscle swells, but it is contained by the fascia, leading to internal pressure to be built up. This causes immense pain in the individual. The only real cure to it is to literally cut the fascia, letting the muscle out of its casing. If this does not happen, this can actually lead to increasing levels of ischemia, which is basically when blood flow is disrupted. Think of it like an ischemic stroke. This is what's happening to everyone currently, regardless of fitness level. The difference is to what degree is it happening. At this point, the creatine kinase is also climbing higher and higher, which is not good for your body. As the muscle cells are officially damaged at this point, if they stop now, they could prevent actual damage to their kidneys, but given that they can't, the myoglobin has now begun to flood the circulatory system. The kidneys will do their best to filter it, but renal stress is becoming more and more apparent. Their urine will begin darkening, showing that the muscle is in fact breaking down and leaking into the surrounding environment. No amount of water that you're drinking is going to fix this. So this will cause more of an inflammatory response in the body, increasing swelling in the legs, leading to more disrupted blood flow, which is just furthering the problem, as you can tell. And it's not just the muscle at this point having issues, but the structure of the leg itself. As we see with many others, their gaits are beginning to change, like with Hank. This causes a lot of issues by shifting strain to muscles that can somewhat handle it, but were never designed to deal with it long term. Blisters would likely form on the feet as people start changing the way their foot strikes, and even with the best fitting shoes, toenails would start falling off, and in general, the feet would begin to fall apart due to damage. Sleep being bypassed has been discussed. As they head into the second night, emotional volatility rises, reaction time would actually slow, and people would begin falling out due to their inability to focus and possibly even understand the ramifications of their choices. Everyone is on the cusp of irreversible damage even at this point. It's important to remember that even long-distance runners at around hour 4 to 6 can start to enter an event that I have been describing, which is known as rhabdomyolysis, which we are about to get intimately familiar with, which maybe this will make you aware you're not. So take care of your meat suit is the best way to say that. As dawn breaks on the third morning, everyone is straight up not having a good time. After many fell that night from the super happy fun time uphill event, those that were left are now dealing with the literal breakdown of their meat suits. The muscles are struggling big time. Dealing with damage that far outpaces their ability to heal, even at this age, the muscle will begin to actively necrose within their body. This means the muscle is dying. And it's not just doing it and being like, haha, bye guys, it's been fun. But as it dies, it then poisons the surrounding area, and this leads to the fibers rupturing quite literally. Now you may be asking, Roanoke, does this hurt the calf? Yes, a lot. It is said that this stage of fasciitis is like orders of magnitude more painful than getting your leg cut off. At least that's how it's been described. You do not want this to happen. And the ones who are lucky, the nerves in the legs have already started to get choked out by the high level of inflammation, as the immune system is also going absolutely goblin mode and will start to have numbness build up in their legs as the nerves begin to die off as well. Like, have you ever walked with a dead leg before from like sleeping in a weird position? That's what most of their legs would probably feel like to a degree. The legs would respond less and less to the actual nerve signals at this point, as muscular contractions are not physically possible. Now, this is obviously not for everybody, but if you're wondering why some, even under the threat of having a force multiplier pointed at them, just cannot move, this is literally why. They are physically not capable. The blood is also not faring well at this point either. Myoglobin has built up to dangerous levels, and everyone left has actually reached a point of no return. Damage to their organs is taking place. As the contents of their muscle leak into the bloodstream, potassium actually shows up in massive numbers and can cause arrhythmia in the heart as a result. The kidneys have been long past struggling with the myoglobin buildup and are starting to incur damage that if they stopped now, it would still be there for life, but the kidneys would still kind of be functional. The urine at this point would be cola-colored, and toxins are continuing to amass within the bloodstream. If fluids are not administered immediately at this point, it could lead to multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, or MODS, which is going to take place later. But it goes beyond this. As the physical aspects of the body have passed the systemic inflammation phase, the brain is struggling with 3 days of no sleep and high exertion. Confusion would set in pretty commonplace at this point. Hallucinations of faces and figures near them would also set in as kind of like a darkening in the peripheral vision. Emotionally, people would begin to actually flatten out, and cognitively, they would make very little sense. Understanding of decisions goes out the window as well, because the frontal cortex is not doing too hot. And what you are dealing with is a person who has pushed past exhaustion and is now like, if they had a health bar, it would be actively going down just for them to continue on. At this point, rest and medical intervention would typically be the only way to recover. However, they have entered a contest to win a prize, so that's not happening! Anyways, here comes day 4. Give it up for day 4. Day 4 is when typically it's so Jover. You will officially have entered mods at this point, and the sleep deprivation alone would mean the Hat Man would be actively chasing you down the road anyways, which explains why that one guy took off his clothes pretty much down to his underwear and began sprinting. He didn't even know what he was doing. The level of hallucinations you would be experiencing due to misfirings in the brain would put you at seeing prolonged hallucinations, as well as having auditory issues like, I don't know. You would probably see your mom calling your name to the side of the road, and that's why you would just get totally donezoed. But you'd be incredibly confused as to who you even are, what you're even doing. It's a miracle anyone would even be walking by this point. However, it's going to go well beyond this. Remember Stebbins? He's not just sick. This is his body actively entering like a cytokine storm situation where it can appear as though he's sick because his body's inflammation levels are basically near lethal at this juncture. He is actively breaking down. What he will say later is the clarity that usually comes just before complete organ failure. Hank shows the brains of everyone are beginning to snap. God's garden is full of weeds shows that the frontal lobe is actively misfiring due to exhaustion and sleep deprivation, but it goes beyond that. It's very likely that the cytokine storm rages within him, and his meninges are inflaming as well to a degree. Also, it could be that his brain is beginning to swell at a certain point, which means encephalopathy is on the table, and it is noted in these situations of extreme rhabdo. Due to this, his ability to judge actions have all but evaporated, and he has no idea what he's even doing when approaching the soldiers in the first place, only coming to when the extreme pain of being shot hits his abdomen and he yells he did it wrong. The religious subtext is also quite common for people entering this point, as the reality is they are actively dying. The kidneys have given up as toxins slowly build up in the body. Well, slowly is relative. With them no longer filtering out the blood, this allows for toxins to build up in every single organ. For Stebbins, his liver and lungs are about to have a really bad time. As with everyone, when your kidneys give up the ghost, waste products build up in the blood, and this is why those with kidney issues must receive dialysis in order to not die. The liver will begin to become damaged as it would be attempting to detox your body, but too much of that material continues to show up. This will begin to cause what is known as ischemic hepatitis. Ischemic hepatitis, with ischemia being blood disruption and hepatitis being inflammation of the liver. Where's Chubby Emu when you need him? This is like other impacts apart from just detox issues. You're not having a good time. Due to the liver now joining team, wow, I'd rather not be here right now, glucose regulation begins to fall out. This means even if the muscles would be barely working, delivery of nutrition to them is cut off at its source. This also impacts the brain, as your brain needs glucose. For basic cognitive functions, you need carbs. But none are coming, big dog, so good luck to you. The lungs of specifically Stebbins, because we didn't see it with the others, are also going to fail fairly soon. The lung tissue is incredibly delicate, and with toxins building up in the blood, the capillaries, wow, I just channeled my professor from college, the capillaries, anyways, those get damaged. This allows them to become leaky somewhat, which then allows fluid to begin filling the pleural space. As this happens more and more, less oxygen gets delivered per breath, meaning even more cells will necrose, resulting in more toxins being built up, resulting in more leakage. So as you can see, this becomes a runaway, self-sustaining cycle quite quick. Those that are left over at this point are near death by the end of day 4. What's worse, you can feel it happening as you enter day 5, that your body is actively giving out underneath you, which brings us to day 5. Day 5, you're in death mode, bro. The question is, like, even medically, could anything be done for you? Apart from maybe an induced medical coma and a kidney and liver transplant coupled with extremely strong anti-inflammatory medication, antibiotics, and fluid, your days are numbered at this point. Now, really, you wouldn't usually be walking by day 5. I'm not saying it's entirely impossible. We'll kind of talk about that here in a minute. But the odds of just a regular person being able to pull this off, let's start with the feet. Destroyed. You see it with Ray. Just by walking, they may as well be bloody nubs. Likely at this point, most of the muscle fibers in the leg are already dead or are just leaking into the bloodstream. Fasciitis would be prevalent throughout, making you hopeful that the nerves in this area are already dead. Otherwise, you're not walking through that sort of pain. Any muscle still left alive is subsisting off pure hatred and cortisol, still contracting, exhausted, and every one of those contractions damages more and more of the somehow still living muscle fibers. Basically, at this point, you just have Doomslayer muscle fibers holding on to each other. You would not make it to day 6. No shot. You physically would collapse. The heart also isn't faring much better. The kidneys gave up a while ago, so as the heart pumps what is basically a toxic, slightly oxygenated sludge through your body, somehow delivering even minute amounts of O2 to dying muscles, it's not going well. The tanking calcium levels, the rising potassium levels at this point can also trigger arrhythmias that can easily turn into a heart attack. Blood clots in the legs can break off at any moment and cause a pulmonary embolism to your failing lungs or a stroke in the brain. Which, let's talk about those, because no shot you would even still be conscious at this point. The lungs, they would be mostly filled with fluid. The alveolar sacs, which facilitated carbon dioxide exchange with oxygen, are compromised to the point that almost no gas exchange is taking place anywhere in the lungs. This is very clearly bad, as this would create a runaway effect that's already running away in the first place. As hypoxia grew, more cells die, as the lungs continue to fill with fluid. When he mentions, Stebbins specifically, that his liver is failing and his lungs are filling with fluid, this is not a guess for him. In people whose organs are failing or they're near death, they apparently can articulate quite well. They know what's happening, where it's happening, and possibly even when it's going to happen. This is why he chooses to just end it rather than the slow end that's going to inevitably follow. The brain becomes involved as a person is actively dying as well. At this point, reality has lost its meaning for everyone who is still standing. They don't know where they are or what they're doing. Of course, it's a movie, so everyone is still somehow cognitively there, although this would not be the case IRL. However, due to the misfirings of the brain, fear is no longer really a problem. The amygdala is not operating properly, nor is the frontal cortex, so the brain really doesn't understand danger. This would allow pretty much the whole group to just sort of accept the end is nigh and that there is nothing that can be done. This is why Ray chooses to sacrifice himself at the end. He has accepted that it's pretty much game over. Although in the book, they switched who sacrificed themselves, I don't really know why. Also, Stebbins apparently survives. Whatever, he was runner-up. But this leaves Peter. In reality, even if Peter is in great shape, he's still gonna die as well. His kidneys would either actively be failing or have already failed. His legs would be damaged beyond repair, and he will likely never walk correctly again. There is extensive damage to the liver and other organs, as probably brain damage is building up due to hypoxia, and the toxin in his blood are causing neuronal death. The reality is, even though he won, even with direct medical intervention, Peter is probably not surviving either. It's Jover for everyone. Now, I did look into the longest walk, actually, not the joke I made earlier, like the longest walk on record. The record holder is held by George Holtzier, I believe. He walked 418.49 miles in the Lord units, or in the units that nobody else uses except for like one guy in Switzerland. It's about 673.5 kilometers. Don't say I never did anything for you, Switzerland. However, even walking that, it took him 6 days, but would take, he would have to take a 2-minute break every 4 hours to change his shoes and eat. So let me do some quick math. So 6 days, 10 hours, 58 minutes. That's 154.96 hours. Every 4 hours, he rested 2 minutes. That means he stopped like 38 times. So he rested around 77.48 minutes total. Subtract 78 minutes-ish for about 9,298 minutes walk. So 9,220 minutes of walking to cover 418.49 miles. So on average, he was walking about 3.67 miles per hour, if my math is correct, or about 5.9 kilometers per hour. You're welcome, Switzerland. So basically, what these guys were doing is with one critical difference. Stopping, even for just a few minutes, can allow for the muscles to relax. Eating, drinking, and resting can stave off rhabdomyolysis. He was still definitely in pain, but through training, it was achievable without being ended. However, it appears these young men, just from my layman's perspective, were in a different situation altogether with the economic depression and randomness of builds. Basically, in the book, again, Stebbins was a runner-up because he trained apparently for this for 5 years. It really doesn't look like the others did, and I believe that's why they began to drop like flies. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. This one had to make up for the Langolier episode that decidedly there's not much biology in that one, so I hope you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy, then please leave a like, as well as a comment, as that'll help get the video out there. Otherwise, you're a huge dork. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Instagram, Roanoke Tales link, which you should go watch that, because once again, the channel's kind of catching some, traction. And also my Patreon in the description if you'd like to support the channel. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the Astronaut tier, we have Kusith and Lipsy Gingy. Thank you guys for your awesome support. At the Astrophysicist tier, we have Death Dancer, Minura, and Webitron Supreme. Thank you guys as well. And to the Scientist tier, we have Frank Shaftcrank, Some Big Nerd, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Text, and the Homeless Guy in the Street, and Gina Elaine. Thank you guys as well. And the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. You are absolute ballers. You don't have to support me, but you do, so thank you. All right, that's going to do it for me. Make sure to rest your muscles, and I will see y'all in the next one.